guys do is absolutely awesome. One of the things that concerns me is I get the impression from Froome that as a group, you campaign for what Froome can be. And what would concern me from a lot of the really valid points I hear tonight is that people campaign with what's wrong. And that's good, but I also think you need a sense of what can be, what is the positive and what is the future. So I think you have to have both sides of that coin. And I'd just like to ask from our friend from Froome, practically, how did you guys go about getting out there and getting known?
Read my book. Actually, that is the answer partly, because that's it. I wrote it. It's called, Creating Independent a DIY Guide to Creating Independent Politics. So it is in there. It's a lot of what Don said at the beginning. Is we were people who were known in the community anyway, I suppose, in that sense, or many of us were, and that's been particularly good because this is truer the second time around than the first. But possibly, like here, there are people that are incomers and not incomers, if you like, and we now have a majority of people who've lived all their lives in Froome, which is brilliant. So we have that sense. It is just being known, and yeah, there is a whole chunk in here of how to begin to get known. We do use social media, or did use social media, and do a lot. And we made a great effort to reach new voters. We did a lot of registering of voters, which was nice because it's we did it completely non-politically and just, are you registered to vote? And then it was a way of getting into conversations with people, which you can do there's something called a PERDA period when you're not meant to, certain places around town couldn't be involved in politics and so on and so on. By registering voters, it's very non-contentious and it's very useful.
That's the lady there. Oh.
Hello, my name is Sarah Jackson. I've lived in Portishead for 10 years. I'm not in the marina, just so you know. My question really was related to, some of you might know me. I originally got involved in local politics when we campaigned for more play equipment at the lake grounds, and I'm very pleased to say that we were successful in that, and that was a group effort. But I kind of took a step back after that. I've got young children. I find it hard to get to the town council meetings. They're always at night, so that's one thing. But I took a step back because it was very difficult at the town council level. Quite supportive. My question to you is, how does your town council relate to the district council? Because our main adversary for the play equipment was the ubiquitous David Passley, who basically hated me on sight and tried to stop me talking every time I came up with statistics, because I'm a researcher by trade, and he didn't seem to like that because I knew how to do participation and engagement, which apparently town councils around here struggle with. But some people on the town council were very helpful, and it was that, what's your relationship and how do we move forward potentially as a town council in developing, changing our relationship with higher authorities, because I don't know how that would be done.
No, and I may, I'll say something and then I might hand over to Janet, because when people ask me, so what have you got wrong, one of my answers is our relationship with the district council. At the beginning, we thought, well, they hated us. It was a disaster for them. Well, not a disaster. They really, really didn't understand what they were doing, and they really didn't like it. So we got off to a terribly bad start, in that sense. So they didn't like what we'd done at all. And then as we became more effective and got better known, that became worse. And then we went down we tried to be nice, honestly. We tried really, really hard to be nice. And then when that didn't work, we started taking the piss. And then when that didn't work, we started being more actively nasty, and none of it worked. And actually, what we didn't realise is that they've got, well, we did realise, but they've got a lot of power. They've got planning. They control planning. And in our case, they completely clearly, and there was no pretense about it, put everything that was to do with Froome on the bottom of the pile. And then as we got more aggressive, they left it there. So a number of things got really badly held up. So actually after the second group of us got in, I took over as leader from the Mal who'd been leading the Pitchfork Rebellion. And I started off trying to be really nice, but I couldn't do it. Well, I couldn't grovel as much as was required. There was so much grovelling that was necessary. It was just awful. So now we're in a sort of situation where we kind of ignore each other, which sort of works. And as I say, we've tried to get money elsewhere, but I'm not really the person who wants it because we haven't got it right. And we're under the Mendip District Council, which is, they have a tiny cabinet who control everything, within a large number of Tories. It's really awful, actually. I mean, my only hope is that they cease to exist very soon. Right? But Janet, do you have the same district council?
Claire.
Claire, sorry.
Yes, you do, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I could write a book. As far as I'm concerned, the people that had mentioned ever getting into the office of Nigel Ashton when I was just a lowly backbencher, they told me it was like going into the headmaster's office and being told off. And I was determined when I became chair of council that I would show what partnership really was. That I could meet with somebody and talk about the things that I knew our town needed and offer to help our district council offer and give what our town needed, because that's the way it should be. And actually, the first time I met Mr. Ashton, I got on quite well. But I failed at the next hurdle because I happened to be at a funeral and he said, oh, we must have a chat. And obviously he meant in his time right away. And because I said, oh yes, at the end of the funeral we'll get together. It didn't seem the right place. And he never spoke to me again. But nevertheless, I feel I don't want to sort of tell tales. The thing is that there are problems because we have this executive system in North Somerset, and it seems to me that the power has got into a very small group, people's hands. And the strange thing is about the political party that is in power, both in the country and in our district, they don't seem to get on. And that I don't understand the differences and difficulties that particular party have with each other. So it is hardly surprising that somebody that may be independent doesn't find it easy to form a relationship. Now, in our council, we've had a few battles because we want to provide, a place of well-being for our town. And it's in a building that has been owned by North Somerset District Council for many years. It's been used as a community building, and really, I don't feel that we should have to pay market price for a building that's been a community use, because it belongs to the residents of North Somerset Council, and they happen to be residents of Nailsea as well. But no, we have to pay that money to get our hands on this building. And although I don't want to pay it, I am so happy that I could persuade the council to do so, just to be free of North Somerset Council, so that we can make our own decisions. And likewise, on a piece of land that we own, we're paying an awful lot of money to get rid of a covenant on it, so that it can be used for something else. And it's been a real battle to get our own councillors, as you can understand, to hand over a great deal of money. But I just want to be free from North Somerset Council and to, if you like, hopefully now we have sold a bit of land, have a bit of money, and we can do the things in our town, and we don't have to ask North Somerset District Council for permission to do them anymore. We can do them ourselves. It's really hard because, they've been hard decisions, but I really hope that we can keep a relationship with North Somerset District Council, because that's the way it should be. But it isn't easy to do so.
Anyone else?
Thank you. David Capron, Portishead resident, 40 odd years. I just wonder, if you stand for local government as a member of a political party, it's very easy to churn out a manifesto from central party, put in a couple of local issues to make people think you understand what's going on. as an independent, if you stand up and say, well, I'm representing the people of Portishead, well, actually, you can't be all things to all people, because all the people of Portishead have different views on a whole range of issues. In your experience, do you, as a group of independents, have a sort of common manifesto, or do you simply put forward your own personal views, when you're preparing for elections?
Don, answer after you as well.
Yeah, sure. And that's a really good and incredibly important question. This is about whether you're putting yourself forward in terms of as to how you're going to behave or what you're going to do. If you see what I mean. I would argue that manifestos are usually just a set of lies. And if you think, that most of the manifestos that political parties produce, many of the things never happen. Now, sometimes it's not their fault, because things happen later that they didn't know were going to happen. So it's like, it probably wasn't in the Tories' manifesto that they would bomb Syria, because that wasn't on the table at the time. But usually they're a set of sort of vague things that you think that people are going to, well, no, not vague, but they're things that you think people will vote for. You may or you may not do them, and you're never really held to task over them. So even at a national level, I think they're a real problem. And when something like the coalition happens, you've just got fantastic excuse. Because the Tories can say, well, we would have done it, but the Lib Dems wouldn't let us. And the Lib Dems can say, well, we weren't allowed to do ours. But, so the whole thing becomes a joke. And so to transfer that manifesto down to the local level becomes even sillier. So what we've done is to say, this is how we will behave. So no, we still don't, and we never have had a manifesto that says this is our view on the golf course or the nature reserve. What we've said is, when that issue needs to come up, or when any issue needs to come up, this is how we will deal with it. Now that's quite difficult to sell to people on the doorstep, because you're on the doorstep and they say, what are you going to do about the golf club, or what are you going to do about the nature reserve, or whatever it is, and you kind of go, I don't know, mate. I mean, obviously you don't really say that, but what you're kind of saying is, I don't know, but I will bring in expertise. This is how I will find out what the issues are, and then I will make a decision. So that's the kind of difference, and that's what makes the way that we've done things different. And so we work together, and that's the agreement that that's how we'll do things. But as I say, it's not always easy to get across, and as you get higher up, so for instance, I talk quite a lot to Bristol Independents. There was a group who stood, as Bristol Independents, and there it's much more difficult, because they have portfolios with education and transport and big budgets on them, so people, not unreasonably actually, want to know how they're going to vote. So that's why I've always felt that this way of doing things can really only operate at this level. Until I met a bunch of Danes who run something called the Alternative Party, who are well worth looking up if you get around to it. So they run, the Alternative Party is now the third largest party in Denmark, and they are also values-based. They've said, this is how we're going to behave, this is the way we will do things. And so, no, we can't tell you what we think about nuclear power. You just have to trust us to do things in a different way. And because Denmark's a bit different than here, well, mainly because they've got a whole different, it's not first past the post, it's proportional representation. So they've got 12 MPs based on this, effectively a really interesting way of working. So it's a different way of doing things. It's rather a long answer, but I think it's crucial, and the other groups of independents who are succeeding around Britain have adopted some form of ways of working. Yeah, I will pass it behind you.
Don, is your leader of the opposition on the district council as well as the independent? How does that work in the same context?
Well, I guess it's somewhat different if you're looking at the North Somerset Council, which is a unitary authority, so combined what the county council and the district councils used to do. If we look at the election for the district council, which some of you may be interested in standing in, I do think it's important to have a flyer, whatever you want to call it, for your electoral purposes, to put through people's letterboxes. So a good photograph of yourself, a biography, people like to know who you are, what you've done. I mean, I was going to say, if you're already involved in groups around Portishead or North Somerset or even the UK, what are those groups and what sorts of things are you interested in, what you're trying to achieve within those groups? But I do think you need to
to list your priorities of the areas of interest you have. I mean, we've already heard about the nature reserve, for example. You may have an opinion about the railway, you may have an opinion about housing, about employment land, all these type of things. I think it's important to have a document which does set out some broad ideas of the way you wish to progress. Now, I mean, I think that what we just heard about is a slightly different matter, because I don't know whether you through ProDEM are going to stand as independents in the individual wards and have your own views as independents, then come together as hopefully when we are all elected, or are you going to have a more Portishead wide type of involvement? That is a slightly different matter, and I think that would be not something that I've experienced in terms of doing a manifesto. And in the description we've given there, I think there are some quite pressing problems in Portishead, so some overarching views and opinions on what would happen if a group of you become elected either to district council or to town council would be important for the electorate to know. I don't think, if they, going back to that ballot box, I think we actually know he or she's quite a nice person, but I've absolutely no idea what they stand for. That's not the overly most persuasive approach to have in that ballot box. So people have got to have an idea about what you're going to think about. You're asking about in terms of what we do as independents on the council. Is that the question you're asking? Well, that's a far more difficult thing, because I mean the way the electoral system has worked in North Somerset, the independents are the second biggest group, so we are the opposition. I'm leader of the opposition. Now, you'll probably be very little surprised to know that I'm probably one of the most left-wing councillors in the whole of North Somerset. And my view of life is somewhat different to my colleagues who may be slightly closer to Attila the Hun. But I think that our overriding principles in terms of an opposition group, I mean, if we were in power, of course, these interfaces would be slightly different, wouldn't they? But I think our overarching desire is to hold North Somerset Council to account as the opposition. So we tend to be leading on children's services. That's my big lead. So things of the children's services I'm involved with. Another colleague looks more at the planning. Other colleagues are more interested in sort of the corporate organisation. So we're represented on all the various committees, and they would tend to lead in terms of that holding North Somerset to account. I think the Froome example is slightly different, because almost, you've got a group of independents who are in charge, but as has been described, you're in charge of something slightly different. If they're in charge of Mendip District Council, I guess the dynamics would be different again. I mean, I'm a member of parish council. We're not political as a fellow parish councillor from Pillsattle. To me, I don't think we are ever political in the way we work as a parish council. We are interested in what the residents of Pill and East Dale want and need, and our interface with North Somerset is difficult because they don't want to spend any money, they don't want to do anything. But I think we just tend to say, well, we're going to do it anyway, and exactly. It gets incredibly frustrating at times with things like traffic powers, where you're offering to pay for things to be done, and they just don't want to do them. Don't know why. I've got this whole argument in Abbots Lee at the moment. The parish council and a developer are prepared to pay for traffic improvements. The North Somerset Council, they don't want to do it because it might set a precedent elsewhere. What? But the reality is that you've got somebody like what the often well-known Elphinat Rees, who drives a big Jaguar, and the only thing he's interested in is people that drive fast in cars around North Somerset. Don't worry about deaths, don't worry about pollution, don't worry about traffic congestion. As long as him and his mates can drive big cars around, that's the overriding traffic principle we have to have. It's worked well in Portishead, hasn't it?
Yeah. I should just quickly say that, I mean, ProDEM is not a party, and none of us have any intention of standing as councillors through ProDEM. We are just trying to enable and help. That's all we're here to do. We've done a lot of research, we've had information from the Local Government Association, all these things, so we're here to try and help. That's our starting position. Any other questions?
Can I just I'm Bob Langton, and I'm the person Don's just referred to from Pill. I've been on Pill Parish Council for rather too long.
Sorry.
It's all right. I mean, I've actually Yes, I was elected once, but we tended not to have competitive elections in Pill and East Gordona. I think because most people think the parish council does a reasonable job, and the challenge more is to get enough people to work on it. But I mean, our experience has been, as Don has just indicated, so frustrating with regard to anything to do with North Somerset Council. And clearly that's true of Nailsea, and I guess if you do succeed in getting an independent council in Portishead, it will be true in Portishead as well. And what I'm really standing up to say is, I do think we need this movement to grow into something which will start to put independent councillors up for seats on North Somerset Council. And I think they would need to have some sort of common manifesto, and the manifesto would not be, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do the other, but our approach to these issues would be to give an indication of direction. And I hope arising out of this sort of movement, this sort of meeting, we can see people coming forward who would be prepared to stand in that context, as Don did in Pill in the first instance, and then in Pill and Abbots Lee when the seats grew a little bit larger. And quite a group of us in the village supported him in that, and it worked on the basis of putting forward the sorts of ideas that Don would be wanting to try and achieve and see through. So I think there is room for not exactly the manifesto of the parties which says, you know, these things we will do, we will lower income tax by a penny, we will do this, we will do that, all of which, as you have said, is just so much hot air. But this sort of approach to these problems will be a common one to us, and I hope over the next 2 to 3 years we can work in that direction. Thanks very much.
Very good, very good. Someone at the back, Paul. At the back. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Brian Clayton. I'm a resident of Portishead. I've lived here for 20 odd years. There's one question I've got to ask really of the representatives who stand for independence in Nailsea, etc., etc. I can understand you don't have any joy with North Somerset Council because that is now an executive, self-electing, elect their own assistants, all the rest of this, and you don't get a say on what goes on there. But on local councils, like town councils, how much influence do you have if you're in the minority there? For example, I think you said you won 10 out of the 17 seats the first time you stood. If, for example, a group here stood, we have 14 councillors at the moment, or we only got 4 in all seriousness, how much do you think they could achieve?
Yeah, not a lot. I think you have to go for total revolution. And then one of the things, there was a group who in May last year wrote to me, having bought the book. It was great. We got seven councillors in. So out of how many? And the answer was 15. I said, so how many of you stood? Well, we got all 7 in. What were you doing? And it was really easy. That all 7 had walked in. I'm thinking, well, surely you could have found an 8th. You know, and so that's partly why you can't knock on the door and say we're going to change the way that Freedom's politics is run unless you're going to be attempting to get a majority, I think. Because the answer is, in my view, if you are just the 4 out of the 12 and the other 8 are all Tories, then you're largely irrelevant. Except that there is a really interesting role, which is probably what Claire's going to say, which I understand you played. And I think, again, this happens more higher up, in my view, where there is a holding to task role, which can be really valuable as well. So, but at a parish level, that's less important. I think you'd be more just steamrolled over, probably. And especially if it's a political party that exists and they've been around for years before, then there'll just be 8 people who go to the pub instead of 12. So I think you have to go for the lot, personally.
Well, when I first joined Nailsea Council, I was literally on my own. I was a bit like Don saying, I just was amongst people who thought and saw the world in a completely different way to myself. And I joined because I had formed in our town years and years ago, in the early days of understanding that climate was changing and environmental movement. And I was asked several times to join the council before I even considered doing so, because it wasn't really my cup of tea at all. I was working full time and I was a young mum. But I never was frightened to be that lone voice. And at first, I was scoffed at, I was called names, I was sent to Coventry once because I dared not go along with the party line of the majority. And gradually, because I've been on the council for quite a long time, some of the things that I said came true. Do you see what I mean? And people gradually, you haven't got time to do this, so you need to just get on and do it. But I just want to tell you, what happened to me. And one of the things I did try and get the town to do, and it was considered political, and it was completely voted as something ridiculous, and that was to get our council to pay a real living wage. In those days, there was only the living wage. There wasn't, the one that's in now. There was this was thought of as being something so absurd. And I can remember the day that at the end of the meeting, I said, listen, I said, you can either be like sheep and follow, because one day this will happen, or you can take a lead. And the councillor, one councillor in particular who voted against me, as most of them did that day, he said to me, I haven't forgotten those words, and today is your day, because it was brought in, obviously, by a Tory government. Not quite the living wage that I would like to have seen, but at least a little bit that made a difference. So, I haven't won every battle by any means, and I have sometimes been very demoralised and felt very sorry for myself because I have been called names. I've often been, go away, you silly little woman, as I expect you've experienced sometimes. And that's why it is so lovely to be in a group of people, whatever your opinion. You don't have to agree with me about anything, but you have sat and listened, and you've been respectful. And I've tried to always be respectful to the people who have got different views to me. The most important thing, as I said to you, is trying to help people develop the critical thinking necessary to see things from a different point of view. We really do all like to think we're right. And I know that I'm not right about a lot of things. But I do believe we all have a conscience. And that word is very dear to me for reasons that I won't go into. But if we follow our conscience and vote the way of our conscience, we're going to get a better outcome, I believe. Because we need to do what's best for everybody, not just for one group or section of society, whether old, young. And to be honest, it is the most vulnerable people that we should be doing most for. And, but that's just my opinion.
Very good. Yeah, very good.
Thank you. I echo Claire's comments, and I would like to slightly disagree with Peter. The chances are that if you stand for election in 2019, and I hope several of you will, I would very much hope that there will be an independent majority both on North Somerset and on Portishead Town Councils. That would be my hope. It may or may not happen. But please don't think that if it doesn't happen this year, in 2019, it's not going to happen again in the following election round. And you do have some power as an independent. One of the spurs for me when I first arrived at a council meeting was when a councillor who lives near the Ship Inn, when I dared to question something, said, well, that's the way we do things in North Somerset. And I thought, that's the way you do things in North Somerset, Felicity. And that's why I'm really glad I won, because I'm assuming there's a different way of doing things in North Somerset. So I think the things you have to think about are as follows. On the council, not all of them, but some of the Conservatives actually disagree with Nigel Ashton. Now, they wouldn't say that, but of course they're not allowed to speak. At the council meetings, the only people who speak are the people who are trying to get their heads further up his backside than they already are, or they're the ones that have the primed questions given to them to ask to make Nigel and his executive seem better. So you as an independent you have a lot more freedom to represent your own residents and the residents of North Somerset, because you can ask questions, there's no party to go back to, it's, as you say, it's on your conscience, and you are able to take up the demands of both your own residents within Portishead or people who ring you from elsewhere who currently have a Conservative councillor who won't listen to them. So you have that power, and there is a lot of hard work in holding them to account, but a lot of it is just straightforward reading the papers that are supplied for the council meetings and asking questions about, well, why do you think this is right? It seems to me not to add up. The arithmetic is wrong. The way you phrase this doesn't seem to make any sense. You've got the ability to hold them to account, and after a while, you will notice they start to listen, because, the waste, green waste, big topic. Why is it that the executive member for waste, is he called a waster, I'm not sure, was unable to answer 8 questions from me in public session in a main council meeting about the waste contract? He didn't answer a single one. He didn't know. And yet all the Conservatives had their group meeting and all dutifully voted for it, even though not one of those questions had been answered. If you'd asked them about the vote, they couldn't have given you the answers. The following time when I spoke up, Mr. Executive Member is suddenly more attentive. I've read through the papers that he supplied and paint he knows nothing about. It is hard work to read through all the papers and hold them to account, but you can do it. And you can make them nervous. You can go to the press. You can go into the papers. You can go onto social media. As an independent, you have massive freedom to represent your electors. Conservative central office isn't telling you what to do, nor is the fear of Nigel's wrath. Now, I will explain to you something which I think is incredibly corrupt in its biggest sense about North Somerset politics. And I hope this will be a driver for more of you to stand. This as follows. We have this executive system. So 40% of the votes is given 72% of the seats. We have the executive system, which means that councillors are at the behest of Nigel Ashton for their roles within that. How does he do that? Well, last time we gerrymandered the seats to come down to only 50. So a lot of Conservatives suddenly didn't have a seat they could stand in. So therefore they become suddenly more loyal to Nigel, because they know that if they are disloyal, as happened to Carl Francis Pester, for example, you're cast out into the deep white world, aren't you? And so within the political ability to control, he has got total control of his party. Otherwise you go. Now why is that bad? Well, it's bad from a point of representing North Somerset. But of course, in this era of austerity, I don't think we're a rich country. Austerity is a totally political thing by the Conservatives to reduce the size of the state. Don't let them dress it up as anything else. It's exactly what it is. But of course, the corruption then becomes greater, because the officers who should be offering advice to all councillors without fear or favour could suddenly find themselves a victim of a cut if they happen to disagree with the party Ashton line. So we have a council now where the senior officers are clearly influenced in the information they give out to all of us by the fact they may no longer have a job if they stand out of line. So this whole North Somerset Council is incredibly politicised across the bureaucracy as well as across the council. I do think that if that's the sort of thing you find objectionable, that you will stand as an independent, be it in town or district council elections for 2019. Thank you.
Very good. Can we take one more question, please? Sorry, Paul. Just coming. This will be the last question. Sorry, as we are running over 9 o'clock.
Paul Thurston. I'm an incomer, so I've only been here 9 years now. So thank you.